As we announced elsewhere on the site, Blade and Soul is finally coming to Europe and North America this winter, with a closed beta beginning this fall. The free-to-play MMORPG from Team Bloodsport and NCSoft has a lot of pent-up demand behind it, and we got our hands on the Force Master, the Blade Master, and the Summoner classes to give you our first impressions. Now, combat in Blade and Soul works a little bit like Terra, and a little bit like a fighter game. Whereas Terra sort of takes player agency to the extreme by just making spacebar the button you need to press to work combos, Blade and Soul makes players rely more on their own skill and timing to present themselves as a competent and efficient fighter. While normal beast-type mobs might have sort of set patterns and set attacks, and behave as you'd expect from most MMORPGs, there are a lot of fellow martial artist enemies in the world. Many of them share the same skills and classes as yourself, so if you have access to a move or a tactic, so will they. I found this out more than a few times when facing a fellow Blade Master, but I digress. Let's start with our level 1 Summoner before we get to the level 20s that were pre-made for us to try out. Now mind you, all of the footage here is B-roll provided by NCSoft. We were not allowed to take our own video because it was an internal alpha test. So you might see stuff here that is not relevant to what I'm talking about, but I'll do my best to kind of give you some of the best footage from the B-roll we were given. So thanks to the sheer stability and smoothness of the Unreal 3 engine, Blade and Soul uses the action, combat, and aiming of games like Terra or Neverwinter to solid effect. There is no tab targeting here, nor are there traditional healers. The Trinity in Blade and Soul revolves around DPS, tanking, and crowd control with support effects. A core reason for this, as you'd expect, is that the game's action sort of requires a lack of healing focus, and the designers want there to be as few barriers as possible when players group up to take on the game's dungeons and harder content. There are cross-server and even possibly cross-region group finding tools, and they're also currently testing the idea to have an in-game voice chat client, but Julianne Hardy, the brand manager, told me that they'd be talking more about dungeons, PvP, arenas, and all that other stuff at a later date. For now, we just got to focus on the basics of gameplay. Julianne Hardy, as I said, is the brand manager here in the North America and Europe. She was my tour guide with our little Lynn Summoner, the very first thing we tried around level 1. Now, much to the hatred of our own community manager, Mike Bitten, I think I'll be playing one of these little guys in the beta and launch because the Summoner, which is only available on the Lin, is absolutely fun and ridiculous in the way that only Korean MMOs seem to be able to capture. You have big ears, a fluffy tail, but the rest of you is the body of a young child, well, a male or a female. That doesn't mean that the Lin are to be scoffed at, though. As I quickly found out, the Summoner has some seriously potent abilities. Swarms of stinging bugs, lashing vines that lock down an enemy and siphon health to the player, and of course, their own cat minion to dish out damage and serve as the Summoner's tank. Yes, it's a cat, and you can even customize them with outfits like you do your own character. I picked the Siamese to match my own little feline friend back home, and was happy to find out that they're incredibly apt melee combatants, just like my cat Hazel. There's even a skill currently called If I Fits, I Sits, where the cat pounces on the enemy, pins them down, and goes all two fists of fury on their face. The Summoner was really fun to play, and I suspect fans of pet classes will be pleased. Even more so, fans of cats. The Force Master is the closest thing Blade and Soul has to a mage. Masters of both fire and ice, the FM switches stances on the fly between the two to deal insane amounts of damage with fire, or to play more defensively with snares, slows, and shields, ice. But they also have the ability to channel pure chi to control enemies. NCSoft's Ben Conrad wouldn't leave my side until I tried out the Force Choke or Force Push combo. Yes, it's exactly as Star Wars inspired as it sounds. You lift the enemy gasping off the ground, and then you can either toss them away from you, possibly even off a massive cliff, or slam them into the ground for damaging effect. The Force Master, during my quick little 15 minutes with her, seemed incredibly hard to learn, but satisfying to play. There's definitely going to be a learning process as you get more and more skills and combos, but Blade and Soul keeps the focus less on a stack of hotbars and instead switches them out on a few hotbar buttons contextually to make sure that you know where and what you're capable of doing at any given time. The Force Master has a lot of skills, a lot of utility, but deals a huge wallop as well. Now you'd think a damage-dealing swordsman would be pretty straightforward, but there is a lot more to the Blade Master than you'd actually expect. Rife with interrupts, damage over time effects, and attacks of opportunity, they are a blast to play and very strategic in a lot of ways too. This is the class who can counter your counter attacks after being knocked down, as I quickly found out during my play session. They'd charge me, knock me to the ground, and when I tried to counter that, they'd kick me and knock me back down and stab me while I was on the ground. Now once you get the hang of it and realize that they can do this to you all the time, you can quickly do the same to them and avoid the situation yourself. It's all about learning what other enemies can do to you. Now, Blade Masters have a nice block, which can be countered with a kick if you're an opponent, or if your opponent has one. They have some good range pulls and great ways to close the gaps between enemies. I'd still say the Summoner was my personal favorite during this brief little demo, but as a melee enthusiast, I'm anxious to see this class with more time. Now, there's a serious sense of verticality in Blade and Soul, as you'll spend just as much time climbing mountains as you do running through valleys. Luckily, Team Bloodsport stuck to the fun of Wuxia, and every player gets the ability to windwalk or glide at level 1 during the tutorial. The best thing I can compare this to is Arcage's gliders, but you do it without the apparatus. As you level up, you get more skills like the ability to dash over bodies of water, to dive out of the air, and so forth. You can sprint quite fast for a long distance, and you'll also unlock quite a few fast travel locations across the game map too. Mounts may not be necessary at all because you're your own personal hang glider in Blade and Soul. Now there are multiple glowing green wells across the landscapes whose names I'm forgetting, and honestly we have an embargo so we just gotta go with it. But when activated, they toss your character into a canned but beautiful travel animation that has them soaring acrobatically across ravines, up mountains, across the mountaintops, across tree canopies, and so forth. North American players will have seen this tactic in Swordsman from Perfect World, but the engine and cinematic direction of Team Bloodsport and NCSoft makes it far more visually appealing here. Still, it's kind of a bummer that it's just a canned animation to get from point A to point B and nothing that you actually have control over as the player. Now what about the question marks? There's still a great deal of content we have not seen in Blade and Soul. While I did a few basic tutorial quests with the level 1 summoner, that's hardly getting a grip on how the leveling process works in the wider world. I will say that zones seem absolutely massive and wide open, both wide-ranging and vertically impressive with plenty to explore. My only hope is that the questing doesn't just guide you from one point of interest to the next, but I'm expecting it will. I do think it is a quest-based game in that regard. Now, Julianne also showed me a bit of the PvP flagging system, where you don an outfit and become attackable to players of the opposing faction. There are two main warring factions vying over land control, but there are also lesser factions across the game that serve rewards and thematic purposes, so you can attack and be attacked by smaller factions of players as well, depending on the outfit you're wearing. Now, for instance, you might don an outfit of the Black Ram Pirates, and you'll be kill on sight to the members of the opposing tribe, and any players wearing that outfit. It's an interesting way to do consensual, open PvP, but I'll still be curious to know more about the goals and rewards behind it all. If it's just an excuse to kill people, it's not really gonna thrive, I don't think. There better be some real driving, thematic, narrative, rewarding reason behind it. We also still have lots to learn about the crafting, endgame goals, arena PvP, dungeons, and on and on. We've barely scratched the tip of the iceberg with this one. I'd say, at first glance, if you're a fan of Terra, Ion, or even Lineage 2 in some regards, you're going to find something to enjoy with Blade and Soul. It's definitely got the winter MMO season all to itself right now. The good thing is, it looks like a very quality game to play, snuggle up with during those cold winter months. Thanks for listening. I'm Bill Murphy with MMORPG.com. We'll have a lot more coverage of Blade and Soul for you now that we know for sure, for a fact, it's coming to America and Europe later this year. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.